Welcome back to Peaky Board Gamer. My name is Hector Rakos and today we're gonna learn together how to play the game Meadow. Meadow was designed by Clemens Kaliki, sorry if I don't pronounce this correctly, and was brought to us by Rebel Studios. The game is for 2 to 4 players, also has a solo mode and plays in about an hour. Now let's see what this game is about in the upcoming overview shoot before we start with the rules. In Meadow board game, players are trekking out in the nature, gathering findings and experiences. Each player has a set of sign tokens that work differently when placed on the main board or the campfire board. The main goal of this game is to gain cards from the main board and add them in front of your play area. The more the cards, the more the victory points at the end of the game. Vertical cards are played in the meadow area, while horizontal cards are played in the surroundings area. To play the cards, however, you need to satisfy specific requirements written on the cards. Players may also satisfy specific objectives on the campfire board and gain more victory points. At the end of the game, the player with the most victory points will be declared the winner. At first, place the board in the middle of the table. In the recessions, place the card holder with the west cards on the left, the south cards in the middle, the east cards to the right, and the north cards next to the board to be used later. Shuffle each one of the decks separately. As these arrows indicate, west cards are used to fill the left column, east cards are used for the right column, and south cards to fill the middle 2 columns. So fill the board with face-up cards from the corresponding stacks. Create a supply with the road tiles of the game. Each player selects one of the colors and takes the path and the bonus tokens of the corresponding color. In a 4-players game, the path token with the question marks is not used. Players also take a road tile from the supply using this side, meaning it's not used. Players choose one player to be the starting player who takes the starting player token. Each player starts the game with 6 cards. They gain a starting ground card which is double-sided, and then starting with the last player and continuing counterclockwise, each player selects one of the board rows and gains all the cards from that row. For example, the last player selects and gains all cards from the 3rd row. The empty spaces are then refilled, and last goes the first player who also selects one of the rows and picks the cards, and the empty board spaces are again refilled. Finally, each player draws and takes a north card. You can do this even easier. After players take their starting ground card, they randomly take a north card, 1 west, 2 south, and 1 east card for their starting hand. As you might have noticed, some of the cards are vertical oriented, while others are horizontal. In front of them, players have 2 virtual areas. The first area is the meadow, where players will be playing their vertical oriented cards. And now that players know their cards, they can decide on a side of the starting ground card and start their meadow. Above their meadow, players have a virtual surroundings area. This is where they will be playing their horizontal oriented cards. Use the correct campfire board and the correct side of it depicting your player count here and set it next to the main board. In a 3-players game, you need to block one of the board's notches using these small tiles. In a 2-players game, you need to block a second notch as well. Place the round marker in the first stone. This track of stones indicates the number of rounds the game will last. My 2-players game will last only 6 rounds. Finally, shuffle the gold tokens and randomly place 1 on each square space on the campfire board. The rest gold tiles are not used and return in the box. The game is now ready to start. The game is played over a specific number of rounds. On each round, players alternate turns, starting with the first player and then continuing clockwise. A player's turn always involves placement of one of the player's sign tokens either on the board or the campfire board and then performing an appropriate action. Then it's the next player's turn. When players play in the main board, they must place the path token to any empty notch in the main board, take the appropriate card and bring it to their hand, and then refill the empty space with a new card from the appropriate deck. Then players may play one of their cards in their hand, even the one just picked, into the appropriate play area in front of them. And this is actually what efficient play suggests, to take a card and then play one card. Which card you take from the main board depends on the path token you play. This one depicts a number 2. After you place the token on the main board, and using it as a starting point, you start counting cards equal to the number depicted in the direction of the path token. So if I place it here, I can take this card, but if I placed it here, I would take that card. And if I placed it in this notch, I would take this card instead. The path token with a question mark serves as a wild. You can make it any number from 1 to 4. Now let's explain the rules for placing cards, starting with the vertical meadow cards. Players start the game with one ground card. Ground cards are identified by this symbol in the bottom left corner. There are 5 different types of ground cards. All of them are found in the east deck of the game. Vertical cards that are not ground cards are observation cards, and they have a victory point value instead in their bottom left corner. All of the meadow cards depict a symbol in the top left corner of the card, and some of them might have 2. In this area, we see requirements for the card to be placed. These are actually symbols that must be visible in our area in order to place them. You must have all the depicted requirement symbols in your meadow and then place the card onto any one card depicting any one of these symbols. Examples. This card requires a bag symbol. I currently have such a symbol in my meadow area, so I can place the card just like this. You cover the top part of the card, but you leave visible the ground symbol. Now my meadow doesn't have the bag symbol anymore. It was replaced by a paw symbol. This card requires a hill ground card and a worm. I have both of the symbols in my meadow, so I can place the card onto any one of these 3 cards. Ground cards have no requirements. You can always create a new column of cards either to the right or to the far left of your meadow. You cannot play them in the middle. You can have up to 10 ground cards in your meadow. Some cards depict a dash line in their requirement list. This means that the player must have at least one of the 2 depicted symbols. In this case, I must have either a bug or a worm and a butterfly in my meadow. I have a butterfly and I have a worm, so I can go on and place the card either here or here. Make sure you leave visible the victory point value of the cards. This card requires a tree and a house. I have a tree and I also have a house. However, if you take a closer look at the card, you see 2 arrows next to the house. This means that I have to place the card either on top of a tree or to a column adjacent to the column with a house. So my options are to place it here or here. Horizontal cards are distinguished to landscape cards and discovery cards, easily identified by their symbol in the bottom left corner. These cards also have requirements depicted in this area. Landscape cards always require one road and maybe some other symbols to be visible in your meadow area, in this case, 2 houses. So if you have a road and 2 houses, you can place this card in your surroundings area just like this. Discovery cards always have a landscape card as a requirement and maybe some other symbols to be visible in your meadow. So if I have a fruit and the landscape symbol visible in my areas, I can go on and place the discovery card here. Make sure to leave visible the victory point part. So in other words, in your surroundings area, you're trying to create pairs of landscape cards and discovery cards. Very, very important. You can always discard any 2 cards from your hand to pay for any requirement on the card that you cannot cover. But when it comes to observation cards, you need to have at least one of the requirements covered, which is normal because you need somewhere to place the card. For landscape cards, you must at least have the road, and finally for discovery cards, you must always have at least the landscape. When players discard cards for any reason, they place them in the bottom of the corresponding decks in any order. When players play on the campfire board, they have 2 options. Either place the token to an empty notch in the board and perform the action depicted in the bottom part of the token. I will explain all of these actions shortly. Or alternatively, place this token to an empty bench and perform one placement from the player's hand to their meadow or surroundings area. With this action, the player performs a double card placement. With this action, the player draws the top 3 cards of any used deck. The player keeps one of these cards and then places the rest of the cards in the bottom of the corresponding card in any order. With this action, the player takes any card from the board and then replaces the empty space with a new card from the corresponding deck. With this action, the player takes 2 roads from the general supply and adds them to their personal supply. Finally, when using the token with a question mark, the player chooses any one of the available actions. Last but not least, before or after executing a campfire action, players may capture one of these circular benches which is free with one of their bonus tokens if the 2 connected symbols are visible in their meadow. Players must use their bonus tokens in numerical order from lowest to highest. Only 1 bonus token may be placed on each one of the circular benches. The bonus token value are victory points that will be awarded to the player at the end of the game. When all players have placed all of their signed tokens, it's the end of the current round. When this happens, all players take back all their signed tokens from the boards. The first player token is passed to the next clockwise player, the round marker moves to the next stone, and players begin the next round. When the round marker passes the hourglass in the campfire board, you must do the following steps. First, you must remove all cards from the main board. The odd cards are randomized and then placed in the bottom of each one of the corresponding decks. Then the south deck is replaced with the north deck. Finally, refill the board spaces with new cards from the decks. Then continue the game as per normal rules. After the end of the last round, the game ends and players count up their scores to determine the winner. In scoring, players simply add up the victory point values on all the cards in their meadow and surroundings areas, as well as the victory point values on their placed bonus tokens on the campfire board. If there is a tie, then the player that has placed the most discovery cards among the tied players wins the game. If the tie still exists, then all tied players share their victory. And that was the rules of the game, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. In the box you will also find some sealed envelopes with some crazy requirements for you to open. For example, the Y envelope has to be opened only on the 24th of December, Christmas. So, if you liked that video and want to see more, please subscribe to my channel, and until next time, have fun and play more board games.